The first film I worked on this term was All the Time in the World, and the role in my film was DP. Our film is an interactive story in which a guy is debating on if he should cheat on his girlfriend or not. If he chooses to cheat, then he is catfished by a guy pretending to be another girl, and if the audience chooses for him not to cheat, then the catfish will send him a message telling him he made the right decision. The restriction placed on us was either 6 lines of dialogue or none. My group decided to use text messages on screen as forms of dialogue. We decided to do this as our story is heavily centred about dating apps and messages, and felt like 6 lines of text was more suitable than 6 actual lines of dialogue. The main influence for our story was Bandersnatch. We liked the interactive element as we felt like it created a more engaging story, and there was a clear separation of arcs. For example, if he chooses to cheat, then it's a reference to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey in Act 2 of The Ordeals. Not only this, but due to the restrictions of dialogues, we took influence from Aristotle's 6 key tenets of dramatic storytelling, specifically diction. The main example, "Hey babe, fancy meeting up?" The romantic language shows the relationship between the boyfriend and girlfriend, and therefore establishes their relationship, making the choice to cheat hard. The main example of cultural consideration in our film is the use of dating apps and social media, as they are heavily associated with Western cultures, especially in the media. So with this in mind, we decided to show 2 different elements of Western cultures. For example, the location by shooting in shopping centres and more Western urban areas. We wanted to create a realistic environment so people who don't live in Western cultures get an accurate idea of Western cultures. Not only this, but due to the Western connotations, we wanted to make the narrative as simple as possible so it could translate into any culture, and that anyone from any culture could gain an understanding of the narrative. However, you could argue that by doing that, we're only heavily implementing ethnocentric ideals which are damaging to non-Western cultures, as not only are they not being represented, but they're being generalised as the same as Western cultures. My role in the film as DP helped convey the story through visual language. I was able to do this through the angles and shot durations. For example, the low angle shot looking up at him shows his position of power when he's talking to another girl, as it's his conscious choice. What went well was a clear and understandable narrative in the beginning. It was easily conveyed, which was useful since we were given the dialogue restriction. What didn't work well is that after the inciting incident of him cheating or not, the story was underdeveloped and didn't make sense. We originally wanted him to get attacked by the catfish or let go, but our actor pulled out on the morning of the shoot, so one of the crew had to improvise, and you can tell it was very unprofessional and winged. If I could do it in time, then I'd spend more time trying to develop the idea in the script, as on the day it made filming very difficult and no one in my group had an idea of what was going on. Overall, my film wasn't that good. We had aspirations, and that helped us work well in the beginning, coming up with the initial idea. However, we weren't able to develop it. This is because we didn't know how to develop it and focused more on the beginning rather than the end, and therefore didn't know how to conclude the story or tie up loose ends. My storytelling has improved as now I know the importance of a story structure and now know to not neglect the ending. The target audience is teens and young adults from 16 to 26, as it focuses around dating apps and relationships, which is often stereotyped to be with young people, and therefore would appeal to them as they often go through the same experiences. Our film probably could have been more culturally interesting by having a more diverse cast. However, from a story standpoint, it probably wouldn't have done anything, as it's a universal understanding as all cultures look for relationships and people cheat regardless of culture. To conclude, my film overall was not successful. I was able to convey the narrative through my role of DP, however there were parts where the story was underdeveloped, unclear, got confusing at the end, but the interactive aspect made it engaging to the audience. The second film we did was called They're Watching, and my role in the film was lighting, but predominantly as an editor. Our story is about a girl who downloaded a virus which has been sent to her by this glitch man. The glitch man then stalks her, attacks her, and takes her eye. The main restrictions we had set on us by the lecturers was nothing copyright, and to have a conventional story, nothing experimental. These are easily avoidable by creating our own soundtrack and using royalty-free music and sound effects. Our group came up with a story by looking at horrors and their conventions. The 2 main horror films that influenced us were the 2014 film It Follows and the original 1982 Poltergeist. It Follows inspired us as we like the idea of something always watching and following you, as it creates a constant state of fear and tension. However, it wasn't just It Follows that gave us the idea of using suspense for our own film and to help aid our narrative. We looked at Hitchcock's theory of suspense and tension. I'll paraphrase his explanation. If there is a bomb underneath a table and you see 2 people having a conversation and the bomb goes off, the audience will be surprised. However, if the audience sees the antagonist place the bomb under the table for it to go off at 1 and then see a clock in the room that says 2:15, the audience is more engaged with the film and it's more suspenseful as they're longing for the characters to escape as they know that the characters are unaware about the bomb. So with It Follows and Hitchcock's theory of suspense and tension, we wanted to help aid the narrative of our film and help aid that horror aspect as we wanted to keep the audience engaged. We took inspiration from Poltergeist as we loved the idea of threat coming from technology. However, we felt that the idea of being trapped inside technology was overused and also outdated. We therefore decided to adapt the idea to a more conventional 21st century society by including the virus being downloaded from social media and the girl being watched through her phone. The main cultural consideration in our film was casting of the actors. The actor who played Glitchman was Asian, and by casting him as the antagonist, we worried it may potentially cause negative racial implications. Therefore, we decided to try and evade this by glitching him out in post, making him seem more monster-like and technological. This way, we were able to keep to the theme of our narrative and be considerate to other cultures and the negative implications that our casting choice may have. The main storytelling theory we included was Aristotle's dramatic events. Peripeteia, a sudden reversal of fate, and hamartia, a character's major flaw. The peripeteia of the narrative is when the girl decides to download the software. This is the inciting incident of the film, as by downloading the software she is allowing Glitchman to follow her. The hamartia of the character is her being gullible enough to download the link. Another storytelling theory that applies to our work is Plato's cave, especially the direct quote from Plato. And if they could talk to one another, don't you think they'd suppose the names they use applied to the things they'd see passing before them? What Plato is saying is that the people in the cave believe the shadow of the object is the actual object, which is incorrect, as it's the shadow of the object, not the actual object itself. In our story, the main character thinks it's just a virus when it's actually a monster. This example of dramatic irony is shown to the audience when we see Glitchman watch the girl on his phone. Our group applied these theories through the characters' personalities and by revealing information to the audience which the character does not know. My role contributed to the story told in the film was I was able to display the narrative through different cuts and clip durations and could control the pacing and order of the narrative to what I thought would most convey the story. I did this by changing the speed of the film and by increasing the pace of the edit. For example, when she is running away, there is fast-paced cross-cuts between both of them running. It builds tension and signifies to the audience that there is going to be a confrontation between the two characters. I made the Glitchman scarier through VFX. By making him glitch more, it gives the film a stronger, scarier horror atmosphere. What went well was the use of VFX, as it helped aid the narrative, such as removing the girl's eyes. It really establishes Glitchman's power as well as amplifying the horror aspect of the film by asserting his dominance over her. Also, the motion graphics intro at the beginning establishes the theme of the film and foreshadows the Glitchman watching her as well as the climax of the eyes being taken out. What didn't work well was in the general edit of the film. There was an issue within the group where I exported an earlier version so it could be sent to another member to add sound and send over other sound files so I could tidy up the edit and add the sound in. However, they didn't do it, so not only was the edit unfinished, there was also no sound apart from the rough cuts I had put in. If I could do it differently, I'd do all the sound myself and not rely on another person to do it, as well as focusing more on the general edit, not just VFX, so it produced a better final film overall. What worked well was the development of ideas. Previously in other groups, ideas have been very bland or underdeveloped. For example, in the previous film, All the Time in the World, we had an idea that the group liked. However, we didn't plan how to execute the idea. For example, we didn't put as much thought into the story. We knew the inciting incident would be the option for the character to cheat or not, but didn't plan any further into these two options, which caused the film to fail. This time round we put more thought into the story, and although the general edit and group error did cause the film to fail, the idea was more developed than any other previous film I had done. What didn't work well was the group dynamic as well as the final edit. The final edit was messy and incomplete, and I spent more time on VFX, and the fact other group members had not done their part also played a role in the demise of the film. As the editor, I do take full responsibility at this, and if I could go back and do it again, I would do all the editing myself and recheck it. Due to the messy edit, the story wasn't portrayed as clear as it could have been. However, one piece of feedback we did got from the screening of our film was that our idea would be more commercially successful as a feature compared to others. Our target audience would be teens and young adults ranging from about 16 to 30. We aim to engage them by focusing the story around technology and social media as it's something used in their everyday life and would be more familiar to them and therefore more relatable. We also try to engage them by having an actor of a similar age as the protagonists, as they can relate to the characters more and the characters may live vicariously through them. The film can have been more engaging from a cultural standpoint by being based somewhere other than Britain. Perhaps if based in a more Eastern culture, it would be more engaging as we never see horrors like this in Eastern culture setting. If we had done this, then we could have potentially engaged the target audience more by offering them a refreshing new take on horror. To summarise, the film overall was successful and unsuccessful. The story itself was a good idea, however it was underdeveloped and needed more work and planning. It was enticing and relatable to the target audience, but could have been more through greater cultural consideration. It was unsuccessful as it was incomplete and the general edit was too rough. However, the VFX and motion graphics worked well, with some tweaking things, we could have an overall successfully commercial film.